The Great Pyramid of Giza consists of over 2 million individual stone blocks. Some weigh 2.5 tons, some weigh as much as 80 tons. They are stacked with absolute mathematical precision, leveling a base that spans 13 acres to within just 2 centimeters. The labor force that achieved this had no cranes, no combustion engines, and no metal tools capable of efficiently cutting granite. Today, we possess no surviving engineering manuals explaining exactly how they executed the construction. Mobilizing human labor on that scale requires a massive energy input. For the ancient Egyptians, that physical engine was the Nile River. Egypt sits in the middle of one of the driest, most inhospitable environments on Earth. By standard metrics, this is a terrible location to build a sprawling civilization. But every year, heavy seasonal rains in the highlands of Ethiopia sent a massive surge of water rushing thousands of miles north into this arid basin. As the floodwaters receded, they deposited a thick layer of dark, mineral-rich silts along the banks. The Egyptians recognized this sharp geographical boundary, calling the fertile black soil Kemet, and the dead red desert surrounding it Deshret. The mathematical predictability of the annual flood meant Egyptian farmers could perfectly align their agricultural calendar to the surge, guaranteeing an annual harvest. While other early societies struggled against volatile weather, Egyptian society relied on a constant, predictable influx of calories. That reliable food surplus meant the land could support a population far larger than the immediate farming community. It funded a highly specialized workforce of soldiers, scribes, priests, and laborers. This geographic predictability provided the raw caloric energy required to build the structural monuments that still define the civilization today. Egyptians considered the pharaoh a literal, living god walking on Earth in human form. They operated on a biological cosmic life cycle. During life, the pharaoh embodied Horus, the sky god. Upon death, they transitioned into Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Because the ruler was an active deity, defying state orders carried immense sociological weight. Questioning the pharaoh was an act of cosmic blasphemy. This centralized religious authority allowed the state to manage its workforce with high logistical precision. Excavations at Giza reveal organized worker villages with dedicated bakeries, breweries, and medical clinics for treating injuries. This diagram tracks the logistical flow of grain from agricultural zones into construction camps. The workforce consisted of skilled citizens fulfilling a mandatory labor obligation when floods submerged their fields, constructing a literal stairway to heaven for their living god. This data refutes the common myth of arbitrary slave labor. Instead, the theology functioned as a highly efficient system that converted state labor into a willing, deeply organized religious duty. The engineering of these structures started out practically. The earliest royal tombs were mastabas, simple, flat-roofed rectangular buildings. Around 2630 BC, an architect and physician named Imhotep rose through the state ranks based purely on his demonstrated skill. He innovated on the traditional design by vertically stacking 6 mastabas on top of one another. The physical result of that structural breakthrough was the step pyramid at Saqqara. Egyptian architects spent the next century testing and refining this vertical design. It was a rigorous process of trial and error, complete with massive structural miscalculations. The bent pyramid records one of those failures. Builders realized their angle was unstable mid-construction, forcing an awkward correction to the slope before collapse. The culmination of this iterative engineering process arrived with Khufu's Great Pyramid. It stood as the tallest human-made structure on the planet for 38 centuries. This diagram demonstrates the exact geometry of the structure. The slope precisely matches the angle of descending sunlight. It was designed to physically represent the rays of the sun god Ra, providing a ramp for the pharaoh spirit to ascend. These were iteratively engineered metaphysical machines, constructed to defeat the decay of time. The state preserved its power through stone, but the individual required preservation through flesh. Egyptian theology dictated that a spirit needed an intact physical body to navigate the next world. To achieve this, they developed a sophisticated neurological extraction process. Embalmers inserted a hooked instrument through the nasal cavity to dissolve and drain the brain. Because the ancient Egyptians did not consider the brain anatomically important, the extracted tissue was completely discarded. The heart, however, was meticulously left inside the chest. They identified it as the ultimate biological seat of intelligence and morality. This diagram visualizes the afterlife test, weighing the heart against the feather of truth. If heavier, the beast Amit destroyed the soul. Afterward, to protect the vessel, the body was packed in natron salt and tightly wrapped in linen. The major internal organs were removed and carefully segregated into 4 distinct protective vessels, known as canopic jars. Mummification was a precise, highly expensive biological technology engineered specifically to grant the elite immunity against the natural elements of decay. In 1479 BC, a woman named Hatshepsut stepped in as regent for her young stepson. Breaking entirely with established political tradition, she refused to step aside when he came of age, declaring herself full pharaoh. To legitimize her rule, she deployed a calculated visual strategy. She adopted male royal iconography, including the ceremonial false beard, directly aligning herself with the inherently masculine associations of the pharaoh role. Her reign generated massive economic success, funding major trading expeditions to the distant land of Punt, returning with immense reserves of gold and myrrh. She channeled that wealth into stunning architectural contributions, highlighted by her enduring mortuary temple, built directly into the desert cliffs at Deir el-Bahari. Following her death, her stepson ordered a campaign to systematically deface her statues and chisel her name from monuments across the empire. Modern historians recognize this erasure as a calculated political act. It was designed to destroy the evidence of a highly successful female ruler. A society engineered for absolute, static permanence occasionally had to actively destroy its own historical records to protect the structural continuity of its power systems. Ironically, the most famous pharaoh in modern culture is Tutankhamun. He was a remarkably minor boy king who ruled briefly and accomplished very little during his tenure. His modern fame is entirely an accident of geography. When archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the site in 1922, it was the only royal tomb that had survived ancient looters, protected by construction debris from a later project that completely buried the entrance. When Carter opened the seal, he found over 5,000 untouched artifacts, including Tutankhamun's 22-pound solid gold burial mask. His immediate report was simply, "Yes, wonderful things." This chart compares the lifespan trend lines of the individuals present at that tomb opening against the general population of similar age. It reveals 0 statistical deviation. The infamous Pharaoh's curse was entirely fabricated by newspapers after Lord Carnarvon died from an infected mosquito bite. In 1799, French soldiers discovered the Rosetta Stone, a large slab inscribed with the same administrative decree in 3 distinct scripts. Because scholars could already read the bottom ancient Greek script, they used the Greek text as a comparative baseline to systematically decipher the hieroglyphic characters above it. After thousands of years of complete silence, researchers could finally read Egyptian administrative records, medical texts, and literature. One surviving fragment of ancient love poetry reads simply, "My heart stood still when I caught a glimpse of her beauty." The exact same human emotion, translating perfectly across 3 millennia. This civilization endured for 3,000 years, leaving behind architectural and written records that allow modern observers to reconstruct their specific worldview with extreme clarity. In our next episode, we examine Mesopotamia. We will explore the world's first written laws, the legendary city of Babylon, and the king who built the very first multi-ethnic empire in human history.